There is a fact that is evident whenever countries go into a currency union. The stronger countries with stronger economies and the bigger banks will overrun debt into the smaller, weaker economies. This was the problem in the early 90s, like 1990, when it was the European Economic Union, and they brought on members like Greece and Portugal and Spain, and they had to try to stabilize their banks and their debts and their economies and their inflation and set their interest rates and get them onto the central bank standard. And that was the reason for why they weren't back when there only used to be 12 members of the European Union, and then it went to 15, which now it's what? Uh, Today, this year, as of February, I found out, Italy, Bank of Italy, in February of 2017, registered 364 billion euros in European Central Bank liabilities that the Italian state cannot easily cover. Now, vast liabilities are being switched quietly from private banks and investment funds into the shoulders of taxpayers across southern Europe. It is a variant of the tragic episode in Greece, but this time on a far larger scale and with systemic global implications. There has been no democratic decision by any parliament to take on these fiscal debts, rapidly approaching 1 trillion euros. They are the unintended side effect of the quantitative easing by the Central European Bank, which has degenerated into a conduit for capital flight from the Club Med bloc of Germany, Luxembourg, and the Netherlands. This socialization of risk is happening by stealth, a mechanic effect of the European Central Bank's Target 2 payment system. If a political upset in France or Italy triggers existential euro crisis over coming months, citizens from both Europeans, debtor, and the creditor countries will discover to their horror what has been done to them. It's a variant of the tragic episode in Greece, but this time it's on a far larger scale and with systemic global implications. Such a tail risk is real. Four out of 5 stories running on the news thread of France's financial daily, L'Echo, are about euro breakup scenarios. It's hard to recall the debate of this character in the continental press at any time in the history of the euro project. You know, since this information came out, folks, in February, you've got Britain that left because of this Brexit. That's later in this article. As always, the debt markets are the barometer of stress. Yields on 2-year German debt fell to an all-time low of minus 0.92 PC on Wednesday. A sign that something very strange is happening. Alarm bells are starting to ring again. Our flow data is picking up serious capital flight into German safe haven assets. Feels like the build-up to the Eurozone crisis in 2011. The Target 2 system is designed to adjust accounts automatically between the branches of the ECB's family of central banks, self-correcting with each ebb and flow. In reality, it's become a cloak for chronic one-way capital outflows. Private investors sell their holdings of Italian or Portuguese sovereign debt to the ECB at a profit, and then rotate the proceeds into mutual funds of Germany or Luxembourg. So what basically shows is that monetary union is slowly disintegrating despite the best efforts of Mario Draghi, said a former ECB governor. The Banca d'Italia alone now owes a record $364 billion to the European Central Bank, and the figure keeps rising. Mediobanca estimates that $220 billion has left Italy since the ECB first launched. The outflows match the pace of the ECB bond purchases, almost euro for euro. Let's see, it's now 153% of GDP and rising. Past the point of no return. This is the debt to the European Central Bank. Past the point of no return for a country with no sovereign central bank. Spain's Target 2 liabilities are $328 billion, almost 30% of GDP. Portugal and Greece are both at $72 billion. All are either insolvent or dangerously close if these debts are crystallized. This socialization of risk is happening by stealth and mechanical effect of the ECB's Target 2 payment system. If a political upset in France, that's repeated. Hold on. They are more likely currency boards. They can go bust, and several are likely to do so. In short, they are not a credible counterparty for the rest of the euro system, says William Boiter of Citigroup. It is astonishing that the rating agencies still refuse to treat the contingent liabilities of Target 2 as real debts even after the Draghi letter, and given the self-evident political risk. Perhaps they cannot do so since they are regulated by the EU authorities and are from time to time subjugated to judicial harassment in countries that do not like their verdicts. On the other side of the ledger, the German Bundesbank has built up Target 2 credits of 796 billion credits. Luxembourg has credits of 187 billion, reflecting its role as a financial hub. This is roughly 350% of the tiny Duchy's GDP, France, of 14 times the annual budget. Luxembourg has a huge creditor, is a huge creditor through the Target 2 system, but it too could get into trouble if France breaks up the euro. If you had a France exit. So what happens if the euro fractures? We can assume there would be a tidal wave of capital flows long before that moment arrived, and that would push the Target 2 imbalances towards 1.5 trillion. So the strong get stronger while the weak are unable to pay their debts or cover their central bank debts. Mr. Boiter says that the European Central Bank would have to cut off funding lines to irreparably insolvent central banks in order to protect itself. Then the chain reaction would begin in a southern default to the ECB, which in turn would struggle to meet its Target 2 obligations to the northern bloc if it was still a functioning institution at that point. The ECB has no sovereign entity standing behind it. It is an orphan. The central banks of Germany, Holland, and Luxembourg would lose some of their Target 2 credits. Yet they would have to offsetting liabilities under enforceable legal contracts to banks operating in their financial centers. These liabilities occur because that is how the creditor central banks sterilize Target 2 inflows. In other words, the Central Bank of Luxembourg would suddenly owe 350% of GDP to private counterparties, entailing debt issued under various legal terms and mostly denominated in euros. They could try printing Luxembourg francs and see how that works. Dilute their currency. Moody's, Standard & Poor's, and Fitch all rate Luxembourg as a rock-solid AAA sovereign credit. Of course, but that only demonstrates the pitfalls of intellectual and ideological capture. It did not matter that the EMU edifice was built on sand as long as the project retained its aura of inevitability. It matters now. Bookmakers are offering 3-to-1 odds that a candidate vowing to restore the French franc will become president. That was in May. Who is president now in France? I know what I need to read next. The glass ceiling is cracking. The wild card is that France's divided left could suppress their bitter differences and team up behind the socialist candidate, Benoit Hamon, on an ultra-radical ticket, securing him in a runoff fight against Ms. Le Pen. The French would then face a choice between the hard left and the hard right, both committed to destruction of the current order. Let me pause this for 1 second. Okay, I just had to pause that, and the president of France right now is Emmanuel Macron. I thought so, because these two leaders, in February when this article was written, Marine Le Pen and François Fillon were the two leaders, and one of them was supposed to win. So this other guy, Emmanuel Macron, came out of nowhere, looks like, and is now the president. Was sworn in May. So, as matters now stand, 4 Italian parties with half the seats in Parliament are flirting with a return to the lira, and they are edging toward a loose alliance. This is happening just as the markets start to fret about bond tapering by the European Central Bank. The stronger the Eurozone economic data, the worse this becomes, for pressure is mounting in Germany for an end to emergency stimulus. Whether Italy can survive the loss of the European Central Bank shield is an open question. Mediobanca says the Italian Treasury must raise or roll over 200 billion a year, and Frankfurt is essentially the only buyer of those bonds. Let's see. Greece could be cowed into submission when it faced crisis. The country is small and is psychologically vulnerable on the Balkan fringes, cheek by jowl with Turkey. The sums of money were too small to matter much in any case. It is France and Italy that threaten to subject the euro experiment to its ordeal by fire. If the system breaks, the Target 2 liabilities will become all too real, and it will not stop there. Trillions of debt contracts will be called into question. This is a greater threat to the city of London and the banking nexus of the square mile than the secondary matter of euro clearing or any of the largely manageable headaches stemming from Brexit. Would anybody even be talking about Brexit in such circumstances? Well, thank you for coming to Plain Mundane Show today to discuss European Central Bank debt and imbalances in the euro according to each nation, especially the lower southern bloc of Europe, troubling over what they call the Club Med economies of Luxembourg, Germany, and the Netherlands, who actually have credits in the Target 2. I'm Alex Aquarius. Please hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications. I'm out.